Hey everybody, I hope you're having a great Tuesday. Today we are talking about habits. Why do they form? How do we break them? Why are they so hard to get rid of? Why do they take control over our lives, and what can be done about that? But first of all, I'd like to remind you that today's the last day for getting 50% off for the Ultimate Alignment Program. Ultimate Alignment Program is how you really go through a life transformation. It's a shift that you go through because you learn how to align with your highest timeline. You learn how to master yourself, thoughts, emotions, and body. You learn how to master your connections and your relationships. And you can read the testimonials on my website. I'm very proud of the results that we've received with different people. And I love the fact that it's serving my purpose of helping change people's lives to the better so that they can thrive in this earthly journey. Everybody deserves to thrive. You're not here to just survive. You're here to make the most out of it and to enjoy life to the max. So use the link in the comments below. I will leave it there, and you can book your call for more information or just drop a text on Messenger. So habits. Google defines a habit as a tendency or a frequent practice that we do, and that's usually very hard for us to get rid of. So habits are very powerful. What happens when you form a habit is that the brain forms these neural pathways, and once it forms these new neural pathways, it's very hard to get rid of them, because biologically there's no such thing as cognitive forgetting or breaking. These neural pathways cannot really be broken. What they can be is replaced. So biologically, neural pathways cannot be broken, but they can be replaced. This is why the proof that they cannot be forgotten or broken is that many people who form a new habit, they do so for a certain period of time, but then they have relapses and they have rebounds. So even if they practice something for a good period of time, sometimes they have relapses. Many addicts have relapses because the habit is so strongly rooted in the brain. These neural pathways become so strong, and they have like a grip over us. They have this control over us, where they become the puppet masters, and we become the robots, and the habit moves us around, dictating when to eat, what to eat, for example. Watch this right now. This is your burst of pleasure. This is your reward. So habits consist of three main things. You have the cue or the trigger or the stimulus. You have the practice itself or the routine, right? The performance of the habit. And you have the reward, that which the habit promises to give you. In the case of sugar, for example, you're getting dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter or that chemical messenger in your body that's linked with pleasure and motivation. When it comes to substance use, heroin and cocaine, addictions give really high rushes. High amounts of dopamine are detected by the receptor cells in your brain, and the brain is not really used to such a high level of dopamine and feeling such, that's why it's a high. And that's why people become addicted, because nothing else can give you that much dopamine at once. Therefore, even smoking, for example, the cue is, let's say you feel stressed. That's a big indicator, stress. You feel stressed, let me smoke a cigarette. You do the practice, the routine itself, you smoke, you have the reward, also a surge in dopamine levels. This short duration of an intense pleasure that you feel. And that's why your brain wants to repeat that over and over again. It seems like a good survival mechanism because it's a program that it becomes used to. Although most habits are formed, if not all, are formed because of an emotional response, an emotion you want to deal with or an emotion you want to escape from or avoid. However, we cannot underestimate the role of social pressure. For example, smoking became a cool thing to do back in the 1950s when Hollywood actors and actresses began smoking as well in movies. And then people started thinking, I have a need to belong to that new cool thing, because the brain is always encouraging us to seek connection, right? Avoid rejection by the tribe in the hunter-gatherer days, and seek connection with people through a sense of belonging by doing the things that they do. And smoking was one of those. So by the 1970s, I think, or the 1960s, or I'm not sure about which era, but during that period of time between 1950s and 1980s, most of the industrialized nations were hooked onto smoking. 80% of people in the UK were smoking, which is a crazy number. 80% of the population smoking. That's insane, you know. People in hospitals were allowed to smoke. How crazy is that? So the social pressure. And even when you work at a company, you know, the peer pressure. And if anybody watches Friends, if you remember that episode, I've watched Friends, so I remember when Rachel started smoking at work because her boss would smoke with another one of her colleagues, and they'd come up with all different projects and cool ideas while they're smoking. So you take up that habit for different reasons. You want to belong, right? You want to belong to that community. You want to belong to these people. And habits is one way of sharing things in common with others, so it strengthens that connection. So this is when it comes to smoking, for example. Sugar may be the same thing. You want to deal with stress. You want something that gives you a quick rush of pleasure. And so you start eating more and more sugar. And when the brain looks at sugar, it thinks, you know, the primitive brain thinks, oh, sugar, calories, survival. Let me go for this. You go for this, you eat the sugar. The receptor cells in the brain receive a lot of dopamine, which is very similar to cocaine and heroin. And that, you know, that intense pleasure is hard to be replaced by anything else. And that's why nothing else seems to be as satisfying when you've taken that much, when you've experienced that much pleasure because of something simple that you just ate. So people who suffer from heavy addictions, literally, as one of the scientists describe it, it's as if their receptors in the brain have been totally kidnapped by the substance. Because when, let's say, a heroin addict or a cocaine addict, just like the sugar, when they take in that cocaine and it produces that rush of dopamine, the receptor cells are like, oh, we're not used to so much dopamine at once. We're not used to this intensity. And therefore, nothing else like a family dinner or having a good time with friends, nothing would be as satisfying as that rush biologically. And you know, this is the chemistry that's going on in the body, and it's very hard for something external to replace the surge of pleasure that's given by this habit that the addicts embrace, and it becomes their life and it ruins their life. So in the case of stress-induced habits, which is the case most of the time because stress seems to be the culprit, it's the number one underlying cause of bad habits and eventually addictions. So you don't want to tackle the habit itself. You want to tackle that underlying cause. You want to tackle the stress. So what you want to do is stress management, learn how to deal with that stress. And when some people, let's say, come to me and go like, I don't know how to deal with that stress. It's, you know, these circumstances that I'm going through are just too pressuring and too stressful and I can't deal with them. This is where we teach them through certain practices, through certain ways of how to change their perspective and how to discover their inner powers so that whatever situation is happening in their outside reality is not a source of stress anymore, because they'll see that situation or that circumstance for what it really is. The only reality is within, right? But not everybody can get to that stage right away. You need certain practices. You need to be immersed in a high frequency that enables you to see that. So number one, you want to manage the stress. You want to get rid of the stress. People who are overstressed are not very good at practicing something called delayed gratification. What do we mean by delayed gratification? Delayed gratification is when you're willing to give up something that gives you immediate pleasure for a much better goal or outcome that you're likely to get at a future point. To give you the best example is the marshmallow experiment, where I think you might have seen, some of you might have seen that, where they bring kids, they have them sit at a table with a marshmallow in front of them, and they tell the child, listen, if you wait just for 10 minutes and not eat that marshmallow, I will come back later and bring you another one, and you'll have two instead of one. So what happened was that in that experiment, they followed these kids for 40 years. And those kids who were able to wait those extra 10 minutes and not eat the marshmallow, they're actually, 40 years later, research has shown that they're much better at stress management. So the ability to delay gratification is a great indicator of our ability to manage stress. However, if you're not good at managing stress, you would seek immediate pleasures, immediate satisfaction. And this is why people become addicted, and this is why they become attached to certain habits that give them this short duration of immediate, intense pleasure. And when that runs out, they just can't wait till the next time they get another intense surge of pleasure. So you want to make sure that you focus on small things that make your life stress-free and figure out ways in which you can get the right help to get rid of the stress in your life or to learn how to better manage it. The second thing is you want to learn how to sleep right. So you want to get enough sleep. And why is that very important? Because sleep will affect your productivity at work. Sleep will affect your mood. Sleep will affect the way you function throughout the day and the emotional state that you carry throughout the day. For example, if you're an overeater, it's been shown that lack of sleep will increase the presence of that hormone that opens up your appetite more. It's called ghrelin. And it will decrease the presence of that hormone leptin, which makes you feel full. So you want to learn how to get enough sleep because sleep is a primary factor that helps with stress regulation and enables you to function better throughout the day. The third thing is you want to learn how to go within. And this is the most important thing because when you are in a state of meditation, and if you tell me, well, I don't know how to meditate, it can start with a very simple practice of feeling present. When you're fully present in the moment and you learn how to be fully present in the moment, you will know how to diminish stress because you will discover something about yourself that is way beyond these habits that you're addicted to, that is way beyond the emotions that you feel. You will become the observer. So you will experience the observer effect while you'll be watching yourself doing a certain action. When you're fully immersed in a certain behavior or in a certain habit and you dive deeper into it and become fully present in the moment, you can start focusing on the sensations that you're feeling. When you're focusing on the sensations that you're feeling when you're performing a certain habit, you become the observer. And when you become the observer, you are no longer a victim of that habit. You're someone who's watching from outside, and so it becomes much easier for you to get rid of it. Of course, this takes practice, this takes guidance. It's been shown that meditation and mindfulness are actually twice as effective in getting rid of addictions and habits as regular therapy. And this is based on studies. So the third thing is by learning how to be mindful, learning how to be present. When it comes to being mindful and being present, certain psychologists have insisted on the fact that what you're doing is that you don't want to resist, you don't want to fight with a bad habit. You never want to fight with a bad habit because that's counterproductive. And that's why people have relapses and rebounds, because you don't want to fight with these neural pathways that are formed. What you want to do is work on forming new ones. When you work on forming new ones, this is where these new neural pathways become much stronger than the old ones. And that's when you start following a new habit. You're learning how to be mindful and how to be present. What's happening is you're learning how to self-regulate and you're learning how to tap into the powers that are within you. So you're no longer seeking pleasure from outside. You're learning how to produce pleasure within. You're learning how to feel those high-frequency emotions when we talk about gratitude, when we talk about the heart generating joy, when we talk about producing a sense of compassion from within, through certain practices, through tapping into the power of the heart. What happens is that when these high-frequency emotions are produced from within, you don't really need pleasure from outside because you're feeling whole, you're feeling complete, you're not feeling a state of lack anymore, and you don't need to fill that lack with a certain habit that's going to induce the presence of dopamine. You're learning how to produce that internally. You're learning how to self-regulate. You're learning how to manage your stress. Not only manage your stress, you're learning how to rise above that and produce emotions that are of a much higher frequencies. And that's why practicing mindfulness, meditation, whatever you want to call it, being in the moment, being present, and hyper-presence is your ability to achieve this sense of alignment fully. And of course, it takes practice. Of course, when you're picking up a new habit, sustaining it will require new neural pathways, like we said. And when for that to happen, you need frequency, you need repetition. And more importantly, for you not to experience a relapse or some sort of rebound, what you need is something called intrinsic motivation, or a deep reason why. So this is where your existential questions come into place. This is where your perspective of life comes into play, because you want to ask yourself, am I doing this for the right reasons? What are my beliefs? For example, when it comes to health, why do I want to stop eating sugar? Is it only to lose weight and look good and have some external reward of people admiring me? Or is it because I really value my health and I value my life, and health is the foundation for everything else? If there is no health, you won't be able to work, you won't be able to socialize, you won't be able to enjoy your day, you won't be able to do anything. So I remember when I used to go to the gym over here, and coaches would say, bikini season coming up, make sure you look good, get those muscles in place, So this is where the women would exercise more and more, because they wanted to look good in bikinis. And then fall would come and winter would come, and that would be lost completely, because they would stop exercising as much, muscles would deflate, and it would defeat the whole purpose. However, if the intrinsic motivation is the basis, and when you want to exercise because you want to be healthy, and therefore you don't over-exercise because you want to achieve a certain look, but you exercise the right way because your health is important to you, that's a totally different story. That's something that you will tend to maintain, because it fully backs up your belief system, your value system, your outlook on life, what you think of life, what you think of health, how much you value your time on earth. That's why the inner work is number one, right? Because it puts everything in perspective, and that's when the soul is in charge, and it makes it easier for you to make those decisions, as opposed to being a victim to the way the mind functions. I want to remember that willpower is very important, whether you're, stopping an old habit or taking up a new habit. However, it's been proven that willpower is not a skill. Willpower is a muscle. Although willpower is very much needed, and energetically we focus a lot on strengthening someone's willpower, it's been shown that people who overuse their reservoir of willpower that they have, even if they continuously charge it, at some point they can get tired, because willpower is a muscle. It's like a muscle. It can get depleted of energy. That's why you see some people working day and night to get something done, and then they crash completely. Even if they're great at spiritual practices, even if they fill themselves up with energy the whole time. That's why willpower is important, but it's not really the main intrinsic enabler and motivator. You have to have a very high degree of self-love. When you have a very high degree of self-love, your willpower will be maximized, because it'll be induced by the right foundation. So willpower is important. However, remember that it might also get exhausted. It's needed, and we work on willpower so much, and people who don't have enough willpower cannot really achieve and cannot really perform a certain action, and cannot really get themselves to stick to a new habit. But when you back that up with the right way of loving yourself, and you have high degrees of self-love generated by your heart, you'll be able to maintain that, and you'll be able to take up a new habit much easier and sustain it. Avoid this huge sense of sacrifice that you want to do to achieve something new, to pick up a new habit. You want to have small goals. You don't want to try to get rid of 2-3 bad habits at once. You want to start in simple baby steps. You want to start with one habit, and you want to place a small achievable goal that doesn't involve high degrees of restraint, high degrees of sacrifice. And you also want to be able to reward yourself. What you want to do is be able to find new rewards, healthier rewards, rewards that are less addictive, but make sure you reward yourself along the way, because when you have a reward system, that also produces dopamine. And so you're replacing the old unhealthy reward with something as rewarding yet more healthy, right? A better practice where you feel satisfied. You can also do something called habit pairing. Habit pairing is when you perform something that you like with another task that you don't like. For example, if you want to take up exercise, but you don't really like to exercise, you want to take a walk, but you don't really like to walk. Here's what you can do. If you enjoy talking to your friend on the phone, you can talk to your friend and walk at the same time. So it won't feel like a heavy task anymore. The second thing is habit stacking. Habit stacking is when you attach a new habit to an old existing habit, and that's much easier for the brain to do. For example, also, if let's take the example of exercise. You get up, you brush your teeth, and you can do 5 minutes of stretching immediately after you brush your teeth. You say, every morning when I wake up, I brush my teeth, I'm going to do the stretching afterwards. And so it becomes attached to that particular timing. Or before you go to bed, if you have a certain routine, then stick that new habit in. For example, it can be doing 20 squats. Okay, before I go to bed, I'm going to put this cream on my face, this cream on my hands, 20 squats, and then I'll go to bed, for example. Or breath work. If I'm too hesitant and I don't like doing that breath work routine, also I will attach it to a habit that I already have engraved in my day, and I will make that a part of it. So, you can see how that works. So managing stress, getting enough sleep, most important of all is living in the present. And that's the one with the highest benefit, because it will not just change your bad habits, it will have an influence in everything else in your life. Mindfulness, meditative practices, going deep within, knowing who you are as a soul and letting the soul take over. Being able to strengthen your willpower, however, that may not be enough. You want to have very strong intrinsic motivation in the form of high degrees of self-love. Also, you want to have a proper reward system, be able to reward yourself once you're trying to get rid of an old habit and picking up a new habit. Of course, frequency is needed when you're trying to pick up a new habit and maintain that. Also, you might want to try habit pairing or habit stacking that will help you sustain new, healthier habits and have a healthy reward instead of the old sources of pleasure. I hope you found this session useful. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them, and I'll see you next week.